I hate when I make videos on here and it's just so dark in my room. I pay too much money for this apartment to have shitty lighting. Anywho, not the point of this video. I decided to make this video because, as some of you may know, I am going to school for dietetics, which is nutrition, basically, if you are not familiar with that terminology. And I'm taking a lot of different nutrition classes, one of them being right now nutrition throughout life cycle, because your nutrition needs and the types of food and macronutrients and micronutrients that you need throughout life changes when you're in different life stages. So it's a really interesting class. I really like it. We started out basically with pregnant moms and then their babies and infancy, and now we're moving up. We're on adolescence right now. And after class yesterday, I really wanted to just make a short little video. This has nothing to do with a reverse diet or a prep or anything like that. It was just something that was on my mind. It was actually a really tough class for me yesterday. It brought back a lot of emotions and feelings about just body self-image and weight loss and weight gain and a lot of things that both girls and boys struggle with during adolescence. So the main point of our class yesterday was discussing eating disorders because they're very prevalent with the adolescent population, and they've been increasing in popularity over the last few years. And it's actually really sad, because what people don't understand is that eating disorders can be deadly. They can really ruin a person's life. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about them. What people don't really understand a lot about eating disorders is that there's kind of a timeline associated with them. Like, you don't all of a sudden just get diagnosed with an eating disorder because you binged on food once and then, took action to make up for that. It has to be repetitive behavior that happens over a long period of time, like a certain amount of time, to be diagnosed as an eating disorder. And the unfortunate part is that if you don't meet that timeline, a lot of times health insurances won't cover your rehab costs because you're not technically diagnosed with an eating disorder. So it just brings back a lot of medical issues with health insurance and all these problems and stuff with our entire health insurance scheme. That's a whole nother ballpark for people to discuss. But it's sad because there are people that really do need help and they can't afford that help. So that's one aspect of, the struggle with eating disorders. But I'm sorry, I'm kind of just looking at my notes so I make sure that I give you guys the right information. What we discussed was the continuum of eating concerns and disorders. So eating disorders don't just happen overnight. They kind of start out with body dissatisfaction. So I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching this video, everyone in the world who's not even watching this video, has had some sort of body dissatisfaction. We are our hardest critics, and we see things in ourselves that other people don't see. The amount of times that I've posted pictures or I've, looked in the mirror and I've said, oh my God, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. Or when I look at myself and I'm like, oh my God, my stomach looks so big. And other people are like, you're being ridiculous. I don't even see what you're talking about. We have body dissatisfaction that not anyone else sees. But when you have an eating disorder, it's to a whole nother level. So it starts off with body dissatisfaction, and then it begins to take form in dieting behaviors. So you'll see adolescents who are 12 or 13 limiting their food intake or going on a diet or doing Weight Watchers or some fad diet because they want to achieve that perfect body image that they have set in their mind. Now, I'm not talking about something that is, you know, regulated by a doctor. If an adolescent is overweight um, for their age and it's unhealthy, yes, maybe they do need to lose weight, but with the regulation of a doctor. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about individuals taking dieting behaviors on their own, not regulated by a medical professional, not anything like that. This is on their own. And then from these dieting behaviors, it turns into what we consider disordered eating. Now, disordered eating is anything that's not your typical way of eating. Um, it's, going for hours without a meal, or going or eating a large amount of food in a small amount of time and then going to the gym to make up for that, or to take action that makes up for eating those calories, like purging or taking laxatives, things like that. And disordered eating turns into an eating disorder when it happens. I believe it has to happen twice a week for 3 months. I believe that's what the um, time range is. So you could be doing this disordered eating 6 times a week for a month, but you're not going to be diagnosed with an eating disorder because it hasn't been 3 months, which I think is a little bit ridiculous, because instead of taking the preventative actions to try to help this person, because their eating disorder is only going to get worse from there if they're already taking these actions 6 times a week, like they're only going to get worse from there unless some medical professional intervenes and helps them. So I think that timeline is a little bit ridiculous. That's my own opinion. Other people might have a differing opinion, and that's completely fine. But that's just my thought on that. So, a lot of factors go into eating disorders. When you're an adolescent, I'm sure many people will agree with me, you're very easily influenced by outside forces. You're influenced by peers, you're influenced by coaches, by your family, by just the media in general. And you have this image that's set for you of, what the perfect body type is, and what the perfect guy looks like, and what the perfect girl looks like. And to be completely honest, there is no perfect body type for anyone. And we set these standards for ourselves that are unachievable. And that's what leads to this disappointment and this depression and all these things that are associated with these eating disorders. Um, we discussed a lot of things regarding coaching and sports with adolescents. A lot of times you'll see, track stars and cross country runners whose coaches are telling them you need to be leaner to be faster. And I'm not saying these coaches are saying like you need to go develop an eating disorder, but if someone's telling you you're not lean enough to succeed at something you're passionate about, you, as an adolescent who's very influenced by these outside forces, you're going to take whatever measures you can to achieve and please these other people. Same thing with boys that wrestle. They are told to go run around the school, or to limit their water intake so that they can make weight for their weight class. Because you want to be the highest in your weight class because that gives you an advantage. You don't want to be the lowest on the weight class because that means all the other guys are going to be bigger than you. So there's all these things associated that coaches and parents and other influential people may not realize that what they say can be misinterpreted by adolescents solely based off of the way that an adolescent's brain works during that time in their life. So it's really important that they be aware of how they approach things like this, and be aware of the signs of eating disorders. Some other things that lead to eating disorders are simply body dissatisfaction. It's if a girl is bullied because she is overweight or any for any reason that she's bullied based off of her appearance, she may take extreme measures to change that appearance and to look better. Um, Same thing goes for if a person is struggling with abuse at home or just other factors in their life that they don't feel that they have control over. They feel like they can take control over what they eat. They can, you know, limit what goes into their body, or they can add what goes into their body. They have complete control, and that makes them happy because everything else is out of their control. And I understand that because I love counting macros because I have the control over what goes into my body and what doesn't. But I would not term myself as having an eating disorder or having disordered eating because, and that's not me being like, oh, I'm in denial or anything like that. Um, I'm taking the necessary steps to be healthy, and if counting macros is something I have to do to be healthy, then that is completely fine, in my opinion. I think it becomes an issue when people are counting macros and it's no longer in their control. They think they have control over it, but in reality, they don't. I think that is when it becomes an issue, when it becomes everything your world revolves around. And I think that's when you really have to sit down and think, like, is this me having control? Is this me being healthy? Or is this me taking measures to try to fix what I see wrong with myself? Um, And so there's three different types of eating disorders. The most common ones that people know or have heard of are anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. Anorexia is basically extreme weight loss. This is something that you can physically see someone has anorexia because they are very, very, very skinny. They're skin and bones. They have a fear of gaining weight and being obese. They look in the mirror and they could be skin and bones, but they see a huge overweight individual. And there's a whole psychological aspect to eating disorders, and that's why I believe that dietitians should be part of the treatment. They should um, be providing nutritional advice on how to make these individuals get healthy again, but there needs to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or someone that works with the mindset of people, because the psychological aspect is the biggest component of eating disorders, in my opinion. It's what leads to the eating disorder itself. And if that's not combated and that's not worked through, then you're never going to achieve full success or full, I don't want to say success, rehabilitation, I guess would be the more correct term. Um, Another eating disorder, like I said, is bulimia nervosa, and that is basically binging and purging. It's eating food and then taking combative measures to go against that, to reduce the amount of calories to make up for it. So it's either exercising to excess or using laxatives or purging, um, all parts of bulimia. And bulimia is harder to see in individuals because they may be a normal, healthy weight. They may not be gaining weight, they may not be losing weight, but their body inside is deteriorating day by day because of the actions that they're taking. And then another eating disorder that's more coming more into focus lately is binge eating disorder. Um, And that's basically when people will eat an insanely large amount of food in a small amount of time. Um, and they won't take competitive measures to make up for those calories. Like they won't use laxatives or purge or anything. It'll just be periods when it'll be like 3 o'clock in the morning and they've eaten an entire cake and cookies and I don't know, whatever else they can find in their cabinets. and then they don't feel guilty about it, but they're doing it in hiding, but they don't take any measures to make up for it. Um, and the difference, a lot of people say, well, I have binge eating disorder because I binge every once in a while. And there's a difference between binge eating disorder and solely overeating. Um, Overeating is just, okay, you ate a little bit more than you should have because it tasted really good and you liked it. Binge eating disorder is when you eat an insanely large amount of food and you have no control over it. There's no part of your brain that says, "Oh, I'm full, but I'm going to keep going because it tastes good." You don't even get that full feeling. You just keep eating. It's like when people say they get angry and it all goes red, that's kind of how I interpret binge eating disorder, is that they don't even know what they're doing at that moment in time. And then before they know it, they've eaten this entire table's worth of food and they don't know what to do about it, kind of thing. So basically, those are just some informational details about eating disorders, just so you have a better idea about them. But one thing the main part of what I wanted to discuss with eating disorders is that they start at a young age. Like, there are children that are 8 or 9 years old that are being diagnosed with eating disorders. And I think that's horrible and it's unfortunate, and it makes me really sad that that's what our society has come to. I often think about the way that I refer to my body, and I'm trying to be more positive about my body, even though I'm doing a prep and I'm, working not working, but like working towards a goal that is basically physically oriented. I don't want people ever to get the interpretation that I hate my body or that I'm not happy. Like, if my body had to stay exactly where it is right now for the rest of my life, then that would be fine. I would be 100% fine with that. I think we all have flaws. We all have things we want to change with our bodies, but we have to learn to love our bodies. And I oftentimes think about, like, one day having a family and having children and wanting to portray a positive body image to them. I don't want my children to grow up seeing me talk negative about my body and then them taking on those behaviors. I don't want them to ever think that they're not good enough solely based off of the fact that they may not look like someone else looks. I really don't want to set that example for anyone. Adolescents or older people or whatever. I think the reason why I'm doing this prep is to challenge myself. Yeah, sure, it's really nice to be in a bikini and look really good on stage and be ripped and have abs and stuff, but I'm not doing it just so people can stare at me in a bikini and say, like, wow, she looks really good. I want people to look at me and say, wow, she put a lot of hard work into that. She spent hours in the gym and she spent a lot of time on posing, and she really cooked healthy meals and dedicated herself to being better than who she was before. I don't want to set an example of people looking at me and saying, wow, she has really nice abs, and that's it. Because there's so much more to people than just their physical appearance. And I think that's what our society has turned into, that people are valued based off of what they look like. And I think that's so disgusting that you get valued off of your appearance. That's ridiculous. Like, there's so much more to people than their outside appearance. So that upset me. And it was just tough to go through class talking about, feelings of inadequacy and what these adolescents go through, because I've been there. Like, I'm not going to say I had an eating disorder. I never had an eating disorder, but I went through tons of different diets. I was a yo-yo dieter. I was in high school like counting Weight Watcher points and doing these fad diets, and I never felt good enough. I never felt like I was valuable or worthy because my body didn't look like other people's, and my body wasn't in shape like other people's. And I feel like people don't get that. They don't get these self-body image issues until they experience them themselves. And looking back on it, it was so crazy to see how much how I'm in such a better mindset now than I was before. Um like I think it's really sad that there are girls out there that look in the mirror and don't see how beautiful they are and just see all the flaws. And I think it's a sad, eating disorders are a really sad disease because they people die from them, and I don't think society realizes that how detrimental these actions can be. And one of the guys in our class said, when we were discussing how adolescents can be influenced very easily by outside forces, he said something that I wanted, oh my goodness, I can't even discuss how mad I was about it. But he said um, that people are just too sensitive these days. And I thought to myself, and I was like, well, yeah, like trying to understand other people's opinions. I was like, yes, people are sensitive these days. But I also said to myself, that doesn't make a difference that people are sensitive today. I think there's a major issue in society with physical appearance. I worked in the fashion industry, and that's all it's based off of is your physical appearance. Models and shows are so unhealthy that they can barely like stand up or get through the day. Like they're so unhealthy, and these companies are still hiring them. They're still hiring them as spokespeople for their clothing that young girls are looking at and being like, why can't I look like that? You know, these companies are setting examples for the youth of America, and they're setting an example of an eating disorder. And I'm not trying to say that every single model that is in the fashion industry has an eating disorder, because that's not true. Some people just have that body type. Um, and I don't mean, some people just have that tall, slender body type, and that's completely fine. But from firsthand experience and seeing the models that were cast for shows, um, not everyone has that body type, and a lot of times it looks very unhealthy. From coming from a position of someone who's going to work in the medical field regarding weight and nutrition, there are a lot of models that do not look healthy. And I don't think that it's appropriate that these companies are still hiring them and that they don't have rules and regulations based off of what these models should weigh and what their health should be, because they're setting the example for the adolescents in this world. And it's a really tough subject, and I don't it's really part of the reason why I did not like the fashion industry and I ended up leaving, was because it's so vain. It's just a vain industry, and they're not doing anything to change that, and that's really upsetting to me. But um more so, sorry, a little like off topic there. The reason why I got so agitated when this individual said that people are just too sensitive was because it doesn't matter if people are too sensitive. It doesn't matter if someone's feelings get hurt more than the other. What matters is the fact that eating disorders are very prevalent in adolescence and even into adulthood. Like, eating disorders don't just disappear when you grow out of adolescence. These are things that stay with you. There are individuals that are mothers that are still fighting eating disorders. There are people that have eating disorders their entire life and they die from them. So don't you dare sit there and tell me that people are too sensitive. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're sensitive. It matters that they need to get treatment, and people need to be aware of eating disorders and be aware that what they say to people can really influence that. Um, like the number of times that people said things to me when I was an adolescent, and it was never like you're fat or you're this. It wasn't anything like that. Um, but just people would say things that were not intended to be rude, but as an adolescent, you kind of, if you already have body image issues, you're going to take whatever is said to you and you're going to spin it in a negative way. So when people would be like, oh, you're pear shaped or whatever, or you're curvy or something like that, it automatically would get spun into your ass is fat and you're too big, because that's the way that our minds are. And for someone to sit there and say, people are just too sensitive, like they just need to get over it. Clearly, that person has never experienced body self image issues, because you would not be saying that in a room full of majority girls if you had ever experienced that. And it really upset me, and I just kept my mouth shut and didn't, you know, go any further with it. But it's a whole society issue. There are many factors that go into eating disorders, and it doesn't matter whether someone's too sensitive or like doesn't have a thick enough skin. The fact of the matter is that eating disorders are growing in popularity. And as someone who's going into the nutrition field, I need to I feel like I need to voice that, and I also need to say that people that do bodybuilding, there are plenty of them that have eating disorders. They may not even know that they have them, but there are. Um, and there are plenty that don't. It it's just it's just the way it is. There's plenty of people that play sports and do track and do wrestling and have eating disorders, and there's plenty that don't. Um, the unfortunate thing is that people get stereotyped, and it turns into like if you're just a slender person, you have an eating disorder. And I think people just need to be more aware of how they speak about eating disorders, how they speak about body image, and how they treat other people, because what you say can really affect people. Um, and lead to things like eating disorders or disordered eating or body dysmorphia. And I don't know, this video is getting really long and I feel like I'm rambling, but I just think it's very important that people be more aware of what they say, especially around adolescents, and just promote a positive body image, a positive self-love, and don't take detrimental actions to achieve results. If you want to lose weight and you medically have been told to lose weight, then do it in a healthy manner. You know, don't go cutting all your food and doing all of those things. Um, be healthy, be happy, and be proud of who you are. Um, Stop looking at other people to base your satisfaction off of. You are you. You being beautiful and being pretty and things like that has nothing to do with the prettiness of someone else. There's that saying that, like, sure, sunsets are beautiful, but so are flowers. And, like, both of those two things look completely different, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they're both beautiful. So stop comparing yourself to others, stop treating yourself in a negative manner, and just promote body positivity. And that's my take on eating disorders and nutrition and everything like that. So, thank you for stopping. I'm sorry this video is like 30 minutes long. I felt like I had to make it after sitting through that class and wanting to like bash my head through a wall a little bit.